Deep in the forests of the Pacific Northwest, Canada, and the American South, there are machines rusting under decades of moss and silence, iron giants that once shook the ground and changed logging forever. Long before the big green and yellow machines owned every dealer lot, scrappy inventors, backyard engineers, and forgotten companies built skidders that revolutionized timber harvesting. These 10 specific machines didn't just work in the forest. For a time, they absolutely ruled it. Number 10. FWD Blue Ox. We start with the one that almost nobody has heard of, and almost nobody has seen. The FWD Blue Ox is believed to be one of the very first rubber-tired log skidders ever built. FWD stood for Four-Wheel Drive Auto Company, a company based in Clintonville, Wisconsin, that had spent decades building specialized four-wheel drive trucks for military and industrial use. In 1953, they turned that expertise toward the logging industry and produced the Blue Ox skidder. The design was rigid frame, meaning it didn't bend in the middle like modern articulated machines. It used conventional front-wheel steering, was four-wheel drive, ran on an International Harvester gasoline engine, and used a cargo winch to drag logs to the landing. By the standards of what came later, it was primitive. But by the standards of 1953, when loggers were still relying on crawler tractors and horses to move timber out of the woods, it was something genuinely new. What makes the Blue Ox so significant is its timing. The early 1950s were the very dawn of the rubber-tired skidder concept. The idea that a wheeled machine, lighter and faster than a crawler, could efficiently move logs through standing timber was not yet proven. The Blue Ox was one of the first attempts to prove it. How well did it work? The honest answer is, well enough to survive, but not well enough to dominate. The rigid frame steering gave it limitations in tight timber that articulated designs would later solve. The gasoline engine was less efficient than the diesel power plants that would become standard, and FWD as a company never committed to the logging skidder market the way the dedicated forestry equipment manufacturers would. Surviving examples of the Blue Ox are extraordinarily rare. A listing that surfaced in Indiana described one of only 2 known surviving examples. A complete machine, rigid frame and four-wheel drive, with its IH engine seized but otherwise intact. It was being offered for $2,000. Press photos from 1953 of the original Blue Ox still surface occasionally on collector and auction sites, offering a glimpse of what may be the earliest photographic record of a rubber-tired log skidder in existence. This machine didn't rule the forest for long, but it was one of the first to try. And for that, the FWD Blue Ox deserves to be remembered. Number 9. Wagner skidder prototype. If the Blue Ox was the first attempt, the Wagner brothers machines were the first serious engineering effort. The Wagner brothers of Portland, Oregon built 2 rubber-tired skidder prototypes, one in 1955 and one in 1956. These were not small machines. They weighed between 30,000 and 40,000 pounds and were powered by 160 horsepower Cummins diesel engines, more powerful than almost anything in logging at the time. The design was essentially a modified rubber-tired front-end loader. The operator's compartment was turned to face rearward over the engine, and a logging arch and winch were installed in place of the loader bucket and arms. Wagner's primary business was building articulated rubber-tired front-end loaders, and they are generally credited with perfecting the articulated steering concept for heavy equipment. The bends in the middle design that every modern skidder, wheel loader, and articulated dump truck uses today. Their skidder prototypes used the same fundamental architecture, so why didn't they take over the market? Tires. In 1955, large, low-pressure flotation tires, the kind of big, soft, high-volume rubber that allows a heavy machine to float across soft ground without sinking, simply did not exist. The only large tires available were high-pressure mining truck tires built for hard surfaces, not forest floor. One of the 2 Wagner skidders was fitted with 14 by 24 20-ply rock service tires. The other ran 18 by 25 20-ply rock service tires. Both were extremely tough. So tough, in fact, that the original tires were still on both machines when they were retired nearly 30 years later. But they were designed for hard ground. In the soft soils of Oregon's timber country, those machines sank, wallowed, and struggled. The Natta Brothers logging operation acquired both Wagner machines and used them for years in the Pacific Northwest. a testament to the fundamental soundness of the design even when the tires were wrong. But without proper low-pressure flotation tires, the concept couldn't reach its potential. When those tires did become available in the 1960s, it was Garrett, not Wagner, who was positioned to capitalize. Wagner moved on. The logging chapter of their history was closed. The two prototypes used by Venata brothers stand as the only examples of a machine that was ahead of its time in almost every way except one. Number 8. Timberjack 2000. In 1962, a new advertisement appeared in logging trade publications. It announced the arrival of the Timberjack 200, the first skidder to carry what would eventually become one of the most recognized names in forestry equipment. The Timberjack 200 was built in Woodstock, Ontario, Canada, by a company then operating as Timberland Machines. The machine ran on a Ford 172 cubic inch four-cylinder gasoline engine, producing approximately 60 to 61 horsepower. It was articulated, bending in the middle to steer, and it ran on large farm tractor tires that gave it reasonable flotation in soft ground. The suggested list price at launch was $8,925. For a logger buying his first rubber-tired skidder in 1962, the Timberjack 200 offered a combination that was genuinely compelling. The articulated design gave it a tight turning radius in standing timber. Farm tractor tires were widely available and relatively inexpensive to replace. The use of largely off-the-shelf generic components, a philosophy that would define Timberjack machines for decades, meant that replacement parts could often be sourced from industrial suppliers rather than waiting on factory-specific components. The first person to ever see a Timberjack that the Venata brothers logger can recall was a neighbor's machine, purchased new around 19. That machine ran on 4 large farm tractor tires and was powered by a Detroit 353 diesel, a 2-stroke 3-cylinder engine that produced a distinctive sound so loud and penetrating that it could be heard long before the machine came into view. The transmission was a manual unit that looked, in the words of one Pacific Northwest logger, like something pulled from a spare parts bin for a Dodge Power Wagon. The brakes were a band brake on the transfer case, technically functional, but completely inadequate for stopping a loaded machine on a slope. It was primitive. But it worked well enough that Timberjack stayed in business and kept growing. The 205 model followed, then larger machines with Detroit diesel power, and by the early 1970s, Timberjack had become a genuinely major player in the North American skidder market. The Timberjack 200 itself was forgotten as the product line evolved. The name eventually passed through Finnish industrial company Rauma Ripola, which purchased 100% of Timberjack, and then to John Deere, which absorbed the entire operation and rebranded it as John Deere Forestry Oy. The Timberjack name disappeared from new production entirely. But that original 200, the $8,925 machine with the Ford gas engine and the farm tractor tires, is where the story began. Number 7. Garrett Tree Farmer Model 15. Ask any logging historian in the Pacific Northwest to name the machine that truly popularized the rubber-tired skidder, and you'll get one answer: the Garrett Tree Farmer. The man behind it was Dwight Garrett, a car dealer and inventive mind based in Enumclaw, Washington. Garrett had already built a business remanufacturing old cranes and shovels into log loaders when he conceived the idea for a rubber-tired, articulated logging skidder. His chief mechanic, Mike Nanovich, took Garrett's concept and turned it into physical reality. The early Garrett Tree Farmer models, the 10 and 15, were deliberately small. This was not a limitation, it was a design strategy. Garrett built his first machines small enough and light enough to run on farm tractor tires of the era, solving the tire problem that had defeated Wagner's much larger prototypes a decade earlier. The Model 15 ran on a small Ford gasoline engine with a manual transmission. It had a driveshaft brake, a band brake on the driveshaft, which was efficient for holding position but had serious limitations for stopping a loaded machine descending a slope. The Model 15 was a machine that the second Venata logger to ever lay eyes on a Garrett described directly. Small, Ford-powered, manual transmission, driveshaft brake. The verdict was clear. The machine was a bit small and only suitable for fairly light work, but it proved the concept. It proved that a light, articulated, rubber-tired machine could move efficiently through standing timber in ways that crawlers could not, and that proof was enough. At peak production, Garrett Enumclaw Co. employed 87 workers at its Washington state facility. Manufacturing licenses were extended to Gothenburg, Sweden, and Toronto, Canada, the Canadian version becoming the Garrett Tree Farmer. At the height of its reputation, logging contractors traveled from across North America, South America, and as far as Russia to purchase Tree Farmer machines in Enumclaw. Garrett himself became known for a particular philosophy of machine building, squeezing as much capability as possible into the smallest, lightest possible package. The Venata brothers own one of the larger models, a Garrett 30A, and described the company's approach as famous for making a 50 lila skidder and packaging it in a 40 lila box. That meant the machines worked hard, but also that they could be stressed beyond their margins if pushed too aggressively. The Garrett name faded in the mid-1970s as manufacturing rights changed hands. Franklin purchased the Tree Farmer brand in 1990 and ran both product lines until Franklin itself shut down. The building in Enumclaw, where the original machines were built, was eventually demolished. Both the Garrett name and the Franklin that carried it forward are gone. Number 6. Pettibone Skidder. Pettibone is a name that logging veterans remember, but for reasons that aren't entirely flattering. The company was one of the early players in the rubber-tired skidder market, appearing alongside Garrett and Timberjack in the mid to late 1960s as the market was beginning to take shape. But Pettibone made a design choice that would ultimately limit the machine's success. It built a rigid frame skidder, where Garrett, Timberjack, and most of the other significant entrants went articulated, designing machines that bent in the middle to steer. Pettibone went with conventional, rigid frame steering. The machine turned like an oversized tractor, with steered front wheels rather than a pivoting center joint. On flat or gently rolling terrain, this worked reasonably well, but in the tight quarters of second-growth forest, where a skidder must thread between standing trees and around stumps on broken sloped ground, the rigid frame was a genuine handicap. The turning radius was larger, the machine was less nimble, and in the logging world, where every trip between landing and cutting area costs time, that matters. Roger Drake, who would go on to build the Franklin logger, actually served as a Pettibone dealer in Virginia before launching his own machine. His experience selling the Pettibone, watching contractors struggle with its limitations in the field, was part of what convinced him that a fully articulated design was the only serious answer. Pettibone's sales literature from the period included models in the 66B, 68B, and 88 series, machines sized for the range of operations then working in timber country. But as articulated competition intensified through the late 1960s and into the 1970s, the Pettibone skidder line lost ground it never recovered. The company refocused on cranes, rough terrain forklifts, and material handling equipment, products in which it remains active today. But the Pettibone skidder, the rigid frame machine that competed at the dawn of the rubber-tired era and lost, is a largely forgotten chapter in both the company's history and the history of forest mechanization. Number 5. Franklin 170 Skidder. Roger Drake didn't set out to build a logging empire. He was running a repair shop in Southampton County, Virginia, servicing equipment for local logging contractors when he noticed a consistent pattern. The machines those contractors were using weren't adequate for the work being demanded of them. Drake built his first prototype skidders from used components, then opened an auto supply business in Franklin, Virginia, Franklin Auto Supply, and began distributing Pettibone machines for the region. But selling someone else's equipment wasn't the answer. In 1962, Drake built and introduced the first Franklin logger. It did not survive its first season without major modification. The forest exposed every weakness immediately. The original design needed planetary axles, a gear-driven winch, a heavier torque converter, and a larger radiator before it could perform reliably. Those changes were made, and the Franklin logger that emerged from those first hard seasons became a machine that could genuinely compete. The Franklin 170 was the model that defined the brand through much of its production life. A mid-sized cable skidder later available with grapple configuration, powered by Cummins inline diesel engines in the 160 horsepower range. The machine used Franklin's own planetary axles and power shift transmission, giving it a reputation for durability in the demanding soils of Virginia timber country. Parts listings from the 1985 and 1994 production years show the 170 equipped with ESCO grapple systems and dual-tire configurations, practical upgrades that extended usefulness in varied terrain. Franklin eventually became a worldwide player. In 1990, Roger Drake's company acquired the Garrett Tree Farmer brand and ran both product lines simultaneously, the Franklin and the Tree Farmer, making them for a period the carrier of two of the great pioneering names in the skidder business. Then the economic pressure became insurmountable. Roger Drake died in July 2012. At the age of 90, his company had already ceased operations on January 1, 2009, according to his obituary, due to extreme economic circumstances. The Franklin logger, born in a Virginia service station and grown into a global brand over nearly 5 decades, closed without a proper farewell. Used Franklin 170 machines still appear occasionally in forestry equipment listings, parted out, rebuilt, or working in small operations that prefer the older mechanical simplicity. But the company that built them is gone. Number 4. Clark Ranger. 667. Among the operators who ran cable skidders through the 1970s, the Clark Ranger line occupied a specific and well-remembered place. They were the machines that felt finished. Where some competitors gave you a reliable drivetrain wrapped in rough-edge bodywork and minimal operator amenities, the Clark Ranger came with details that mattered. The Clark Equipment Company, a firm whose principal business was industrial forklifts and automotive transmissions, entered the logging skidder market with the Ranger line, and the 664, 665, 666, and 667 models built through the 1970s became fixtures of North American timber operations. The 67 was powered by a Detroit diesel 453 engine, a 4-cylinder 2-stroke diesel that was one of the most common power plants in the mid-1970s logging equipment world. It ran on 23.1 by 26 tires and came with Clark's own power shift transmission, automatic rather than the manual gearboxes that still appeared on several competitors. A single control lever operated both steering and the front blade, an ergonomic improvement that operators who spent 10 to 12 hours a day behind the controls genuinely appreciated. In Australia, the Clark Ranger 668, the larger model with a Detroit 6V53 engine rated at 96 horsepower, had a particularly interesting career. Initially considered inferior to Timberjack in that market, a series of field modifications transformed the machine's performance, removing water ballast from the tires, fitting Goodyear logging tires at lower pressure, adding a tilt blade, and fitting rear wheel weights. Those changes turned the 668 into a competitive machine in Australian conditions. The still larger Clark Ranger 8080 was eventually deployed on the slopes of Mount Baw in Victoria, where it extracted mountain ash timber from trees approaching 500 years of age. Used Clark 667s still appear in equipment listings with original Detroit diesel engines, Clark 13660 transmissions, and working winches, a testament to the durability of the basic architecture. The Ranger brand did not die in one place. It was sold by Clark to VME, which passed it to Valmet, which sold it to Allied Systems, which eventually stopped skidder production entirely. 4 corporate owners over 2 decades, and then silence. The Ranger line that loggers once called the Cadillac of cable skidders found no 5th owner willing to keep it alive. Number 3. Can-Car Tree Farmer C7D. In Canada, the Tree Farmer arrived wearing different colors and carrying a different nameplate, but underneath, it was a direct descendant of Dwight Garrett's Washington State original. The Can-Car Tree Farmer was built under license by Canadian Car and Foundry Co., a large Canadian manufacturer with decades of experience building railcars, aircraft, and heavy industrial equipment. The Tree Farmer machines built in Canada occupied their own place in the market, distinct from both the American Garrett line and the other competitors working Canadian timber. The C7D was the upper-end model of the Can-Car line, and it was archetypical of what the mid-1970s skidder market offered at its best. Power came from a Detroit diesel 453, a 4-cylinder 2-stroke diesel that was essentially the standard engine specification for serious skidder work in that era. The 453 was loud, distinctive, and durable. Operators who ran it describe a sound and a feel that is immediately recognizable even decades later. The C7D came equipped with a hinged grapple, making it one of the more capable load-handling configurations available at the time. In 1974, the Tree Farmer line made a visual change that became deeply embedded in the memory of Canadian loggers. The machine switched from orange to lime green, For anyone who started their career in Canadian timber operations around the mid to late 1970s, that lime green color became synonymous with a specific kind of work: hard, straightforward, bush country logging, with a machine that didn't ask for much beyond oil changes and tire maintenance. The C5D, the smaller model in the can car line, was described by operators as 6 levers and 3 pedals, manual transmission, straightforward hydraulic winch, no electronic complexity. What it lacked in refinement, it made up for in repairability. Parts were priced reasonably. The design was mechanically simple. In remote Canadian bush operations where a breakdown could mean a day's lost production and a difficult parts run, those qualities were not minor advantages. The Garrett Tree Farmer line faded as the larger consolidation of the North American forestry equipment market reduced the space for regional manufacturers. Like its American Garrett parent, it was eventually absorbed into the Franklin-managed Tree Farmer line, and then into silence when Franklin closed in 2009. The lime green machines are gone from production. A few survive in collections and on small operations in rural Canada. Number 2. Caterpillar 528. Caterpillar's reputation in the logging business was built on a simple promise: the machine will outlast the competition. When Cat entered the skidder market, they brought that same promise with them, and at a significant price premium to match. The Caterpillar 528 was introduced in the mid-1970s and remained in production through 1992. It was powered by the Caterpillar 336 turbocharged diesel engine, producing 175 horsepower, more power than the Clark 667's Detroit 453, but slightly less than the Clark 6686 VOE5. The 528 weighed approximately 30,950 pounds with grapple installed, ran on massive 30.5x32 tires, and used a powershift transmission with Caterpillar's own hydraulic engineering throughout. One of the defining features of the Cat 528's reputation was the ESCO swinging grapple configuration, where most skidders used a fixed boom or hinged grapple that required the operator to back directly to a log. The swinging grapple mounted on a rotating ESCO assembly gave the 528 the ability to reach off to the side of the machine. In tight timber where precise backing was difficult, that side reach capability significantly expanded what the machine could do without repositioning. The 5T28 was not without its criticisms. Operators noted that climbing in and out of the cab while carrying a chainsaw was more difficult than it needed to be. Cat's vertical integration, building proprietary engines, transmissions, and hydraulic systems rather than using off-the-shelf components, made parts more expensive than the Clark or Timberjack equivalents, which ran common Detroit diesel components available through multiple suppliers. But nobody questioned whether the 5028 would last. Machines built in the early 1980s were still working 20 years later. The used market for Cat 528s has remained remarkably durable. Examples listed at $35,000 to $49,000 appear regularly on forestry equipment platforms. Machines with rebuilt Cat 3306 engines, gearmatic winches, and tight powershift transmissions still operational decades after production ended. The 5T28 was eventually superseded by the 535, 545, and 555 series as Cat evolved its forestry product line. In 2014, Caterpillar introduced the 555D as its largest skidder ever. But among Pacific Northwest loggers who ran the original 528 in old growth and second growth timber through the 1970s and 1980s, there is a specific kind of loyalty to that machine that no brochure for a newer model quite replaces. Number 1. John Deere 440 cable skidder. If one machine on this list can be said to have changed not just what skidders could do, but what skidders were expected to be, it's the John Deere 440. In 1965, John Deere entered the logging skidder market for the first time with a machine that John Deere's own historical record describes in plain terms. Before its introduction, wheeled skidders were little more than an engine within a frame. The 440 changed that. The John Deere 440 cable skidder produced 59 horsepower from a John Deere diesel engine. Modest by the standards of what came later, but entirely appropriate for the work being asked of it. It was articulated, bending in the middle to steer. It came with an inside-mounted hydraulic blade for trail clearing, and critically, it was designed with operator positioning and comfort as explicit engineering priorities, not afterthoughts. This sounds obvious in retrospect. Of course, a machine operator deserves a well-designed workplace, Of course, ergonomics matter when someone is spending 12 hours a day in a cab. But in 1965, in the logging equipment world, that thinking was genuinely new. The machines that preceded the 440 were built around mechanical function first. If the operator could reach the controls and survive the shift, the design was considered adequate. Deere brought decades of farm tractor engineering to the 440, a philosophy of human-centered machine design that had been refined through tractors used by farmers who also worked long days in difficult conditions. The result was a skidder that felt different to operate because it had been designed with the operator's experience in mind. John Deere's financing structure also played a critical role. Industry observers of the era noted it directly. It doesn't matter how good it is if you can't buy it. Deere's well-established agricultural credit programs made the 440 accessible to logging contractors who wouldn't have qualified for or been willing to take on the financial exposure of a Cat or Clark machine. The 440 established John Deere in the skidder market so effectively that the company never left. The 440B and 440C followed, with parts interchangeability with John Deere farm tractor components keeping maintenance costs manageable. In 1973, Deere introduced the 740 skidder, built with 145 horsepower, blade winch options, and a best-in-class grapple, marking the company's step into the large machine category. Used 440 machines eventually traded at $25,000 and above, competing on value with machines years newer. The 440 itself is gone, superseded by the D Series in 1983, the E Series, G Series, H Series, and now the L3 Series. But John Deere's current 640L2, 748L2, and 948L skidders are the direct descendants of the machine that, in 1965, first insisted that the man behind the controls deserved a real workplace. That insistence, that the operator matters, was the 440's true revolution. And it started in the forest. So that's it for today. If you like this video, then please hit the like and subscribe button for more videos. Thanks for watching.